Why did they decide to send him to rookie league team, which is as low as he can go?
Yeah, it is the lowest rung of professional baseball, really. It's the complex league. This is where you have short season baseball guys who are just beginning their professional careers. So those will be the first opponents that Alek Manoah faces. Once he goes through some physical testing, mechanical testing, and this is part of the reason that he's down in Florida is because they have their big player development complex down there in Dunedin. So he will go there with David Howell, one of the Blue Jays coaches, a guy with a background at Driveline and other places, and they'll work really closely just to get a sense of where Manoah is physically and mechanically. Then from there, the next step likely would be to get him into games, and there's probably some appeal to the idea of getting him in where there is the lowest of low pressure. I mean,
Mhm.
we'll see the box scores, but there won't be cameras. There won't be a lot of fans. Like it's basically a friends and family crowd in Florida in June. And that's where he's going to start this process of trying to get back to being an impact big league starter.
So that makes sense. It makes sense for a lot of different reasons. You've got your complex down there, you've got a ton of resources. It can be a little bit more private. Yeah, you would like to think, though, that, okay, again, it makes sense, but only if it's basically the worst case scenario, which is that you're dealing with a multitude of factors here that you can't really diagnose, right? Like if he's got one thing wrong with a mechanic, then it's like, okay, fine, send him to Buffalo because he can work on that and it's lower leverage and he can continue to pitch through. It's why I was surprised they didn't just leave him in there the other day. I thought, man, just leave him, let him. The game's over essentially. It's 6-0. Let him pitch. Let him try to fight his way through it. Let him go out on a positive note. Don't bring him out of here with just one out. And then you go, well, if there's a huge mental component to this, then yeah, you kind of have to save him so that he's okay. I don't think that one extra, run tacked on there, a couple more pitches would break a spirit like Alek Manoah's. But no, you do have to be considerate with your players and you don't want bad blood to develop. But it does feel like to me, we're basically balancing three potential things that all might be happening at once, that it isn't just one thing. It could be that his conditioning needs to improve and his ability to work with the pitch clock, and how those two things are related. We've never been really sure. It's been a lot of speculation, but it seems at least plausible, especially given, what's been out there. Two is that, there's some mental stuff that he's working through with his confidence. And three, that it is mechanical as well. Like, is your impression that it's like all of those three things are going to be worked on as he's down there?
Yeah. Yeah. I think everything is on the table. I think all of those aspects, if you're looking to get the best hitters in the world out consistently and do it in October when the stakes are highest, I think that all of those aspects are areas to look at. And, I don't get the impression that the Jays think there is one single issue here that's easily identifiable. I mean, for example, if he was tipping his pitches, then you can solve that in the major leagues between starts in one bullpen session. If he was, not getting enough, he's opening up too early in his delivery, and it's just that, and everything else is perfect. The velocity's there, but he's opening up too early, and that's leading to misses on the glove side. I mean, that's something that maybe it's a bit more of a long term or medium term fix, but it's identifiable. I think what we're
Mhm.
seeing here is there's so many things going on, and the velocity's down, the movement on his pitches is down. The results obviously aren't there. We've seen him and heard him talk about the effect it's had on him mentally as
Mhm.
well. So that's a component, of course, as it is for all these guys as they go through the ebb and flow of a season. So it's just a lot going on, and part of the process that's going to happen this week in Florida is just trying to understand physically and mechanically where is he at from a strength and mobility standpoint.
Mm. How long do you think he's down there?
At this point, it's an open question. Like,
Mhm.
I'd be surprised if he's down there for less than a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But I mean, if he's pitching in a AAA game on June 28th, that wouldn't seem weird to me.
Hmm. Yeah, because that was the thing I thought was the next step that we maybe didn't spend enough time discussing, or that I didn't see, because it was like such shocking news, right? And it's like, okay, what's happening here? What's happening here? What's happening here? And I thought, well, how do you get out of this? Because if it is all of those different factors, that's a lot to sort out in a month, you know? And at what point do you start, exposing him to batters that aren't at, again, the lowest rung of baseball? Like, I don't know how much information you're going to get outside of working on that conditioning and, seeing the actual, break of the pitches or the way that, his delivery is looking, whether he can get that velocity up on the radar gun. But, eventually he's going to have to go through AAA, right, before he comes back to the Blue Jays.
Yeah, I think so for sure. And I think like it's really not that you want to go too much off results, but it really will be interesting to see, how he fares in these complex league games once he starts pitching. Because, honestly, the way he's been pitching to this point, especially recently, the last few starts, it's not really a combination of pitches and stuff and command that you would project to do well really in most professional settings, because he has had so much trouble getting ahead of hitters. And that's really the root of this. He needs to be ahead in more counts.
So, do you have any idea as to how much he was actually consulted on this? Like, how much he was involved in the decision here? Because it is such an odd one, right? Like, this isn't just a demotion to AAA to go work on your stuff. This is like, hey, we're sending you essentially to, the mountains to go work with, the master. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, this is such a strange and unique thing that the Blue Jays are doing that I wonder what his involvement was.
Well, John Schneider said he was upset to hear the news. Alek Manoah has known that this is not going well, and he's known that there is some work that needs to happen. What form that took was always going to be an open question. If we were having this conversation this time yesterday, I probably would have raised the possibility of, hey, could he go on the Phantom IL? And the difference between being optioned and the Phantom IL is, among other things, he's not getting service time because he's not on the major league roster. And this is a player who, this is a point Shai Davidi made last night when he and I were talking in the press box. But, if this lasts for a few weeks, this could impact his schedule for arbitration eligibility. So he might no longer be arbitration eligible at the end of this season. And of course, in baseball, that can be a swing of millions of dollars. So, I don't think that's foremost on his mind. But this is a guy who wants to contribute to a major league team. I don't think his dream is to contribute to a Florida complex league team. And, you add on to that, he's removed from a major league setting. Yeah, I think it makes sense that he probably wasn't too thrilled with this.
Yeah. Okay. So then this isn't collaborative, because I wondered if it was, hey, he's telling the team that he doesn't think it's something that he's working out in AAA. He also does get to like have the opportunity to go home. It's just such a stark contrast with the guy he is, right? Where you mentioned he's one of the biggest competitors on the Jays. Like, even I was kind of, I don't know the way I was interpreting it yesterday, but I watched his post game, or I read Shai's piece from the other night, and he's outlining what happened with the 7 batters that he put on, right, in that Houston game. And he's like, I thought I threw a good pitch here, and this one's a bloop, and this one's this. And I'm like, okay. To a degree, this just does show you the confidence that this guy has. He's like, okay, I might be shaken when I'm out on the mound, but he obviously cares deeply. He loves the craft. One of my favorite things about Alek Manoah is that he's a throwback player in the sense of, I don't think that he cares about too much outside of baseball. Like, there's a reason why he wants to be a correspondent on MLB Network. There's a reason why when the Jays get bounced, he's watching games and still doing radio appearances. And, the reason why he's on Twitter interacting with different baseball accounts is that this guy's not trying like other players to, launch fashion lines and get involved in other businesses as a front-facing person. Like, baseball is his thing. And that's going to be the fascinating thing to watch here is, how well he takes this. Like, how patient can he be when he doesn't have a track record of someone who is obviously he's never had to be patient, man. He's been dominant everywhere forever. Like, I can't, who knows when Alek Manoah has ever struggled? Like, what, when he was like 13, 14? Like, what, do we have even a sense of an idea of when he last struggled in his baseball career? He's been a force, like at the collegiate level, at the AAA level here with the Blue Jays. And so, I am kind of curious what it's going to look like for him, where he's at like the fortress of solitude, where we're getting these like tiny little updates, but we don't really understand what they mean, and how hard he's going to be pushing to get back here, and whether they have to basically figure out like when is too soon for him. It's really, really interesting, man.
It is. And I agree. I think he loves the game of baseball, even just, talking to him about facing like great hitters in the game. He gets a kick out of facing Miguel Cabrera,
Yep.
having grown up in Miami, or he gets a kick out of facing Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout. Like he really, I think, appreciates that. And like you said, like he's an MLB Network correspondent because it's fun for him. He likes having fun with the game of baseball, and obviously it took a turn. It's no longer as fun as it was. This season's been incredibly challenging for him. But I think too, like it's interesting. You look at, and this is a point Chris Bassett made in conversation with Hazel May on our pregame show yesterday. But it's interesting. You look at some of the guys on this Blue Jay staff, some of the pitchers on this staff, and Kevin Gausman in 2019, like which wasn't that long ago. Kevin Gausman was DFA'd. He was on waivers. He was picked up by the Cincinnati Reds at that point. And that's only 4 years ago. And now Gausman is like an undisputed one of the best 5 or 6 pitchers in baseball. And same with Chris Bassett himself, who you look back at his transaction log, Chris Bassett has been optioned not once like Alek Manoah has. Chris Bassett has been optioned 14 times in the major leagues. Like this happens to really good pitchers. And, this is an extreme case. I'm not trying to say otherwise, but it's possible for Manoah to recover here.
Yeah. I will say that for him, the weird thing is that there doesn't appear to be like any injury, right? Like we haven't heard of some kind of whenever people do the Ricky Romero comparison, I'm like, yes, Ricky definitely went through it mentally and Ricky fell off, but he also dealt with, 2 knee surgeries and something with his arm? I can't remember exactly because it was a long time ago, but yeah, his body was starting to work against him. And yeah, with Manoah, we don't really have a clear idea of what that is. Yes, pitchers go up and down. It's just weird to see a guy that has been so dominant and so good, have this happen to him. Like after 2 full seasons, essentially, of being an ace and being Mr. Confidence. And that's why I wonder, too, with this, like part of the reason that he's in Florida and part of the reason that he's just, completely sent away is I have to imagine that for a guy like him, who has had so much success right away, who's been someone who stands at the, in the top of the dugout and likes to mix it up with people, who is one of the big personalities in all of baseball, who is unafraid to talk about Garrett Cole, right? Calling him the biggest cheater in the game. Like all of the attention that you call to yourself is awesome when you're leading. When you're at the front, it's incredible. But I have to believe that there's at least a weight to this on Alek Manoah of, oh my God, everyone's looking at me all the time, and I called all this attention to myself. And frankly, I don't envision a lot of players around baseball who have been bothered with the way that he comports himself, rooting him on. So, like, I wonder if there's just a feeling amongst, like, his peers and the fans and the media and everything that, Manoah has placed on himself that they look at and say, we need you to keep this personality, we need to keep you this, but also you're going to have to let go of some of the ego stuff in order to take a step forward.
And the challenge for Manoah, I mean, among many other things, is just mentally staying focused on where he's at himself. Because it could be easy to get pulled in those different directions and start thinking about, what about that MLB Network spot? And should I have done, should I have made that comment about Garrett Cole? Really, this is the time for him to narrow his focus. And maybe that's part of the appeal of the Florida complex league setting, is just to get back to the basics of, all right, your job is not to worry about headlines. It's not to worry about TV networks. It is simply to worry about executing this pitch, frankly, better than he was in the major leagues. And, that might mean more velocity. That might mean a quicker pace to get used to the pitch clock. It might mean better. It's definitely means better command and more pitches in the strike zone, more competitive pitches. I mean, how many times this year, just to get back to some of the on-field stuff. How many times this year have we seen Manoah miss like 2 feet in the right-handed hitting batter's box or spike breaking balls that land 2 feet in front of home plate? And those are just non-competitive pitches. It doesn't matter if it's 0-2 or 1-2. No hitter swinging at that. So he needs to be around the zone more, even when he's not in the zone. And a lot of that is going to be front of mind for him, and hopefully that's where the focus is, and it's not on all of the distractions that can surround a major league environment.
So I will say this though about Manoah, because of his story and because of his rise, and just from conversations I've had with him and just observing him since he became a Toronto Blue Jay, I don't want to diminish this because yeah, it can be. I'm sure he's in a hole right now, and it's going to be really hard for him to climb out of it. And that all those mental pressures that I talked about are very real. But I just think he's strong. Like he is mentally strong, and that he will find his way out of that part of it. Like once he starts to see results, the confidence with a guy like him is never going to go away. I think that we will see Alek Manoah again, carry himself the way Alek Manoah has here, which is the big
Yep.
barking guy who, is backing up his teammates and, talking like, look, man, what was it, the Baltimore game where he was yapping at guys? Like, and this is the middle of his struggles. I just think he'll find his way back to that. The part of it that's difficult is when we make all these comparisons to other pitchers who have struggled, right, and who have fallen off and who have come back, and the Gossmans, or what's the guy in Texas right now that was a stud with the Braves and then fell. I can never say his name. It's Mike
Fultonevich.
There we go. Yeah, I was gonna say I can't say his name. It's a mental blocker for me. We never had a guy with the pitch clock do this before. Like this is the first year of pitch clock impact on guys like this. And so when we're using precedent, it can be a little hard because it really does feel as though this is a major component for him, that he does seem sped up at times. And this goes back to the preseason. He was pretty vocal about it, and it's just extended into the year. And that's the part of this that I feel like is the easiest thing to identify, but also is not something that you're going to be able to change in one season. And that's, how do you get someone accustomed to that? And how quickly can you get their conditioning in a place where they're better prepared for it? That's the part where I go, well, if we're doing this from a timeline standpoint, if that's what this is, if this is a major part of it, then I don't think that you can be relying on him again at any point again this season as any semblance of himself.
Well, yeah, certainly no guarantees, and definitely creates a lot of questions for the Jays starting as soon as Saturday, when probably Bowden Francis, maybe a bullpen game, so they have some real questions there. But as for the conditioning aspect and the pitch clock aspect, like I think every major league player, the better shape you're in, the better. It's a long season. There's a lot of taxing forces on these players, on their bodies. So that applies to everyone from your Julio Rodriguez's and your Bobby Witt Juniors to take any player. It always helps to be in better shape. But at the same time, with Manoah, I just like if he was getting through the first and second innings no problem, and then running into issues in the third and fourth, then maybe I would point to that a little bit more. But it's really from the jump, and I think to some extent, this is an issue of his stuff just not being there. Like we're not seeing him 95, 96 with a biting slider at 89. We're seeing him 91, 92 with a slider that's lost effectiveness. Hitters are hitting 328 against it with a 600 slugging percentage this year. Not good. Not what you expect. So, the stuff itself is not there. And I think that leads to, and look, I'm not a pitching coach, I'm not a sports psychologist, but I think that could lead to a little bit more pacing between pitches if you know that the pitches themselves are not moving as much.